After 16 years at TechVantage, I sat across from Elaine Foster while she told me, "Leah, we're restructuring your position." Her voice had that smug edge she didn't bother hiding. We were in a small conference room, and sitting next to her was Carol from HR. Both wore those polished, corporate sorrow expressions like they practiced them in front of a mirror. "The company's heading in a different direction," Carol chimed in as she slid a manila folder across the table toward me. "You've made valuable contributions," she went on, "but we're merging the research division with product development." I just nodded, taking the folder without even cracking it open. I already knew what was inside. Same boilerplate severance deal. 2 weeks' pay for every year I gave them, 3 months of health insurance, and a list of career counselors I'd never call. "I understand," I said calmly. "These choices are tough." They looked relieved. Clearly, they'd been bracing for tears, yelling, maybe even a meltdown. After all, here I was, a 53-year-old woman being nudged out of an industry that worshipped youth over wisdom. What they didn't realize was that I'd seen this coming weeks ago, ever since an email thread meant for someone else landed in my inbox by mistake. "We'll need your desk cleared out by Thursday," Elaine added, more confidently now that I wasn't making a fuss. "Also your keycard, laptop, and phone before you go," she continued. "Your team will be informed this afternoon." My team. 5 brilliant engineers I handpicked and guided over the years. The same folks who helped me build the distributed processing algorithm that powered AccountSphere, TechVantage's crown jewel. That software ran in over 45% of Fortune 500 companies. "Of course," I said, getting to my feet. "Anything else?" They traded awkward glances, clearly thrown off by how composed I was. Elaine found her footing first. "That's all. Thanks for keeping this professional." On my way back to my office, I walked past the executive meeting room, walls made of glass, like everything was meant to be transparent. Inside, I spotted CEO Graham Whitaker waving his hands around during a PowerPoint titled, Q3 Revenue Projections. Same Graham who'd stood on stage at last year's conference and taken credit for my algorithm, only referring to me as a member of the research team. Back in my office, I closed the door, pulled out my personal phone, and fired off one short text. "It's happening. Friday's my last day." The reply came back instantly. "Perfect timing. Contracts are ready. Dinner tonight to finalize?" I looked down at the desk calendar. Today was Wednesday. Friday would be my last walk out of TechVantage. And Monday? Monday would be interesting. That night, I met Daniel Rhodes at Meridian, a sleek restaurant far away from the TechVantage building. Dan, CEO of Precision Systems, TechVantage's biggest rival, understood the importance of keeping things quiet. He'd booked a private alcove tucked away behind elegant Japanese-style screens. "So they actually did it," he said, shaking his head after we ordered. "I figured they might, but to cut the person who built their core tech?" "Graham never really understood what I built," I said, sipping water. "He liked the interface, the slick demo, the flashy marketing, but the architecture underneath? Just tech stuff to him." Honestly, the irony was beautiful. 2 months ago, I'd found out that TechVantage had never even filed the patent for my algorithm. I'd asked the legal team about it. They said it was just a slip-up and that they'd get on it right away. But something about how they answered didn't sit right. So I started digging through internal docs. That's when I found the strategy memo, the one that laid out their plan to claim my algorithm as a company invention, no individual credit. They were planning to let me go before filing the patent, knowing that intellectual property created on company time was theirs by default. What they didn't know, I'd already started refining the algorithm on my own. Nights and weekends using my own equipment. The upgraded version was 50% more efficient. And that version? Not covered under my employment agreement. Last month, I quietly filed my own patent, under my name, with timestamps and logs proving every step had been done off the clock. The application sailed through thanks to the sharp IP lawyer Dan had connected me with. "Everything's ready," Dan said, sliding a folder across the table. "As soon as you sign, Precision Systems gets the exclusive license. Monday morning, the press release goes out. We name you our new Chief Innovation Officer." I read through the documents, though I already had every number memorized: 7-figure signing bonus, big chunk of equity, and ongoing royalties for any product using my algorithm. "What do you think Graham's face is gonna look like when he figures it out?" Dan asked, grinning. "Honestly," I said, "I'm more worried about my team. They don't deserve to be caught in the fallout." Dan gave a short nod. "Already taken care of. We've got spots open for all 5 of them if they're up for it." He wasn't kidding either. Senior level positions with hefty pay bumps. I flipped to the last page of the contract and signed my name. Just like that, I'd locked down my future, taken care of my team, and finally gotten credit for what I built. To new beginnings, Dan said, lifting his glass. And to knowing your worth, I added, tapping mine against his. Thursday and Friday flew by in a haze of farewell meetings, paperwork, and awkward goodbyes. I stayed professional through it all, even as whispers and side glances started following me through the halls. A few admin assistants gave me sympathetic looks. Some of the younger devs awkwardly asked if I'd write them LinkedIn recommendations. I made sure to leave everything in perfect order: projects, logins, documentation. Every single detail recorded. Not out of kindness. Out of purpose. I wanted proof. Proof that I'd done right by the company, even when they hadn't done right by me. Friday afternoon, during my final HR interview, Carol ran through the checklist like she'd done it 100 times. You understand that all intellectual property created during your employment is the property of TechVantage, she said, sliding a non-disclosure agreement across the table. Of course, I said with a smile. Anything created during work hours with company tools under company direction. I made sure to stress those conditions just a little. Not that she noticed, she was too busy ticking boxes on a form. And you confirmed that you haven't taken any company materials or proprietary information? I haven't taken anything that belongs to TechVantage, I answered truthfully. The patent? That was mine. Back at my desk, I boxed up my things. Family photos. A stack of conference badges from 15 years of events. The Christmas mug my team had gifted me last year. Then Elaine showed up at my door leaning against the frame like she just happened to be walking by. Just making sure you're all set to go, she said, watching me pack. Everything's crystal clear, I replied, wrapping up a small glass award I'd once received for the very algorithm they were now trying to erase me from. I placed it gently in the box, nestled in layers of tissue. The irony was thick. You know, Leah, Elaine said, these decisions, they're not personal. Graham just thinks the company needs a more youthful direction. I looked her dead in the eye. I get it. It's just business. Something in my voice made her blink. For half a second, she looked unsure. Then she brushed it off. I mean, what threat could a soon-to-be jobless 53-year-old woman possibly pose? Are you planning to take a break? She asked, trying to sound concerned. Actually, I said, I already have something lined up. I start Monday. Oh. Her eyes widened. That's quick. What kind of role? I smiled. A leadership one. I'm looking forward to it. She gave a polite nod, but I could tell her mind was already somewhere else. Well, good luck, she said, and that was that. As I stepped out of TechVantage's glass doors for the final time, keycards handed in, cardboard box in my arms, I paused to look back at the building where I'd spent 15 years building my career. Up on the top floor, the executive boardroom lights were still on. They were probably in there right now, talking about how to split up my duties among younger, cheaper hires. What they didn't realize. In less than 3 days, that same room would be filled with panic. Monday morning arrived clear and bright. I slipped on my new charcoal suit, the one I bought just for this moment. At 7:45 sharp, a Precision Systems town car pulled up to take me to my new office. Press release went live at 7, Dan told me as I settled into my new corner office. Floor-to-ceiling windows, real leather chairs, none of it subtle. The trade sites are already running with it, he added. Comms is keeping tabs on all the chatter. The announcement had been crafted to hit like a precision strike. Precision Systems secures exclusive rights to breakthrough processing algorithm. Welcomes Dr. Leah Monroe as Chief Innovation Officer. It laid out my credentials. Named me the sole inventor. Made it clear this tech was mine, and that from now on anyone who wanted to use it had to come through us. At exactly 9 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text. Total chaos here. What did you do? Andre? My lead developer. I grinned and typed back. Check your personal email. All 5 of you have offers waiting. 8 miles away, inside TechVantage HQ, their Monday morning meeting had gone completely off the rails. Andre kept the updates coming. Apparently, Graham walked into the office to find both the general counsel and the CFO waiting for him, looking like they'd seen a ghost. The moment that press release hit inboxes across the industry, all hell broke loose at TechVantage. By 9:15 that morning, what should have been a routine Monday meeting had turned into a full-blown crisis. Board members were dialing in from wherever they were, phones buzzing nonstop. Meanwhile, the legal department was scrambling through my old employment contract and every piece of documentation tied to the algorithm. They're pulling every file with your name on it, Andre texted me. Somebody even rolled in all the servers from the research wing so the tech team could start digging. I could picture it perfectly, Graham pacing the boardroom like a caged animal, throwing questions at Elaine and the lawyers, demanding to know how they let this happen. The stock had to be dropping already. Nothing rattles investors like uncertainty, and our announcement had stirred up plenty. At 10:30 a.m., I got an email straight from Graham. His tone practically used panic. "Leah, there appears to be a misunderstanding. Please call me at your earliest convenience to discuss." I didn't respond. Just forwarded it to Precision Systems' legal team and let them handle it. By noon, the story was everywhere. TechVantage stock was down 10% since the opening bell. Precision Systems? Up 14% and climbing. 3 major tech publications had already reached out, wanting interviews on what they were calling a strategic power play that sent shockwaves through the accounting software world. Dan dropped by my office while I was settling in. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Honestly," I said. Validated. 15 years of people taking credit for my work. Of being told I was lucky just to have a place at the table. Now finally, someone was recognizing the value I brought. Just then, my new executive assistant popped her head in. "Dr. Jennings, the dev team is ready for you in the main conference room." She paused. "Also, TechVantage CEO has called 4 times in the past hour. Please let him know I'm tied up in meetings today," I said, calm as ever. "Our legal team will be in touch about licensing terms later this week." As I walked toward that first meeting in my new role, my phone buzzed again. "Andre. Board just called an emergency session. Graham looks like he's about to explode. P.S. My team and I accept the offer. When can we start?" By Tuesday morning, the fallout was impossible for TechVantage to ignore. Accounts feared their top product couldn't function without my algorithm. It was what made them competitive, what let them crunch massive data loads faster than anyone else. Now they had 2 choices and neither was pretty. Pay up and license it through Precision Systems or spend years and millions rebuilding their entire platform from scratch. Andre's next update came in around 10:45 a.m. Graham's calling an all-hands at 3 p.m. It was Andre's last day there. He and the rest of my old team would start fresh with Precision Systems next Monday. "Rumor is they're planning to sue you." I forwarded that one to our legal team. Their reply came fast. "Let them try. Your documentation is airtight. Logs, timestamps, proof you used your own gear on your own time. We're covered." While they were spiraling, I was settling in like I'd been here for years. The respect I was getting at Precision Systems was night and day compared to the slow erosion I'd endured at TechVantage. In meetings, when I spoke, people actually listened. No one hijacked my ideas and rebranded them as their own. No one saw my age as a threat, they saw it as experience. As value. "The engineering team is already implementing your updates," Dan told me during our afternoon check-in. "Early tests are showing a 53% boost in performance. Better than expected. I had more improvements in the works, I admitted. Things I never shared once I found out they were planning to cut me loose. Their loss. Our gain," Dan said with a grin. "By the way," he added, "our first licensing inquiry came in this morning. Not from TechVantage. They were still in denial. It was from Dataflow Systems. They didn't want to get caught in the blast radius." At 4:40 p.m., another update from Andre came in, a full breakdown of Graham's all-hands meeting. Graham had tried to act like everything was fine. Told his staff they'd vigorously defend the company's proprietary tech. But the panic in the room was obvious. Employees were already updating their LinkedIn profiles. People could sense the ship listing. Andre said someone asked point-blank if TechVantage had failed to file the patent. Elaine looked like she might pass out. Graham shut the Q&A down right after that. By Wednesday, the ripple effects had grown even bigger. 2 major clients reached out to Precision Systems asking about switching away from AccountSphere. They were nervous, worried TechVantage couldn't maintain the platform without the person who built its foundation. Our stock rose another 9%. TechVantage kept slipping. That afternoon, I got a call from Carol in HR, the same woman who'd handed me my severance folder not so long ago. "Leah," she said, her tone flat and overly formal. "I'm reaching out to talk about your patent situation." "I don't think there's any confusion," I replied. "My employment contract clearly states anything developed on my own time, with my own resources, is mine. The documentation supports that," I added. She hesitated. "Graham was hoping you might be willing to come in and talk through some options. Any conversation from this point on needs to go through Precision Systems' legal department," I told her. I'm sure they'd be glad to discuss licensing terms. Silence. Then finally, a resigned sigh. I'll pass that along. Later that day, I led my first formal presentation to the Precision Systems board. I laid out our tech roadmap with my algorithm at the heart of it. I stood at the front of the room, not tucked in a corner like I had been for years. And when I looked over, I caught Dan giving me a small, approving nod. By Friday, just 1 week after I walked out of TechVantage for good, the company was in full-blown crisis mode. Their stock had taken a nosedive, down 22% since Monday morning. Major investors were calling nonstop, asking hard questions. Industry analysts started publishing headlines like, "Can TechVantage survive the algorithm crisis?" And, "How one strategic misstep could sink a tech giant." Through my contacts in the industry grapevine, I heard that Graham had finally admitted to the board just how bad things really were. They were faced with two options. Either license my algorithm from Precision Systems, likely at a price that would gut their margins, or rebuild AccountSphere from the ground up, without touching anything covered by my patent. They've already started interviewing for a new dev team, Andre told me during our Friday video call. We were going over the details of his transition to Precision Systems. Graham says they can replicate the functionality in 5 months. I laughed. Out loud. That algorithm took me 2 years to fine-tune. And that was with deep, insider knowledge of the tech and the market. Exactly, Andre said. No one believes him. Especially not after our team all resigned at the same time. That mass exit? It hit them hard. The brainpower was gone. Later that afternoon, TechVantage's lawyers finally reached out to our legal team to start talking about licensing. We were ready. Our response was already mapped out. Terms that were fair on paper but tough in practice. 3 times the standard licensing rate. And a public acknowledgement naming me as the creator of the technology. They'll flinch at the credit more than the cost, Dan said as we went over the terms in his office. Graham's pride won't let him admit he pushed out the person who built the whole thing. Then they'll have to start from scratch, I replied. And every day they waste trying to rebuild is one more day we widen the gap. The next Monday, 10 days after being cut loose, I stood in front of my brand new innovation team. Andre and the rest of my former engineers were all there. The energy in the room was electric as we kicked off the planning for the next evolution of the algorithm. This is what real development feels like, Tasha said, looking around the table. Back at TechVantage, we spent half our time explaining the basics to execs who didn't care. That's the difference, I told her. Here, your knowledge is respected. You matter. Just as we wrapped up, my assistant appeared at the door. Dr. Jennings, there's a development out of TechVantage, she said. The board just announced a leadership shakeup. Graham Whitaker was out. Effective immediately. News spread fast. Within hours, headlines started popping up across the tech blogs and industry sites. TechVantage board oust CEO following patent oversight. Elaine was gone too. So was the head of legal. Anyone tied to the failed patent filing had been shown the door. That evening, I got an unexpected email from Harrison Price, TechVantage's new interim CEO. Unlike Graham's desperate message the week before, this one was professional. Clear. Dr. Jennings. Congratulations on your new role. I've been brought in to help TechVantage stabilize the situation. We'd like to discuss a licensing agreement for your patented technology. We are prepared to publicly acknowledge your contributions and make amends for the actions of previous leadership. Would you be available to meet next week? I forwarded the email to Dan with a short note. Phase 1 complete. His reply came almost instantly. Beautifully executed. The board's calling it your first major win at Precision Systems. Looks like TechVantage was finally learning the hard way. What happens when you underestimate the people who build your future? 3 months later, I found myself backstage at the National Technology Innovation Conference, waiting to deliver the keynote. The room was packed, industry leaders, reporters, engineers, young developers. Many of them already knew my story. And now, the organizer announced, please welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Leah Monroe, Chief Innovation Officer at Precision Systems and the mind behind the revolutionary processing algorithm transforming data management across industries. The applause was loud. Real. As I walked up to that podium, I couldn't help but smile. Funny how much things can change in just a few months. Just last year, I sat in the back row at this very same conference. Back then, I was still with TechVantage, just another face in the delegation. Watching Graham deliver a keynote about his company's innovations. Now I was the one at the podium. Thank you, I began, scanning the sea of attentive faces. Today, I want to talk about who owns innovation and why recognizing intellectual contributions matters, no matter where they come from. My presentation walked the audience through the technical foundation of my algorithm. But I also zoomed out to address the bigger picture. The need for recognition, respect, and accountability in the tech world. I never said the word TechVantage out loud. I didn't have to. Instead, I spoke about what happens when companies treat their innovators like cogs instead of creators. After the talk, during the reception, several young women in engineering came up to me for advice. One of them, maybe 30 years old tops, told me quietly, "Your story changed how I document my work. I started keeping detailed records whenever I build something on my own time." Smart, I told her. Your ideas deserve protection. Later that night, I glanced at my phone and saw a news alert pop up. TechVantage had finally inked the licensing deal with Precision Systems. They named me directly as the inventor of the algorithm. Their stock had stabilized a little, but it never recovered to where it once was. Some losses can't be undone. Exactly 1 year to the day after I was told to pack up and leave, I was sitting in my spacious corner office at Precision Systems, reviewing the quarterly innovation report. Under my leadership, we'd released 3 major products built on my algorithm, each one carving out a bigger piece of the market from TechVantage and the other players. A knock at the door broke my focus. It was Dan holding a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. "Happy anniversary," he said with a grin, setting the bottle on my desk. "The board wanted me to tell you in person before the news goes public. We just passed TechVantage in market valuation. For the first time in company history." I smiled. Not a grandiose grin, just a quiet, steady satisfaction. That's what happens when you value innovation the right way. As Dan popped the cork and poured the drinks, my assistant stepped in with a sleek white envelope. Inside was an invitation to keynote the Women in Technology Leadership Summit. The topic? Owning your intellectual value, how proper documentation changed an industry. Dan glanced at the invite and chuckled. "You've become something of a legend, you know," he said. The executive who didn't realize what she had until it walked out the door. It had turned into a cautionary tale, one being whispered in corporate boardrooms all over the country. Harrison Price, still leading TechVantage after the shakeup, had rolled out sweeping reforms, new policies around patent protections, proper attribution, and recognizing in-house innovation. Word was they based a lot of it on the systems I built here. It was never about revenge, I said, raising my glass. It was about acknowledgement. About reminding the industry that real innovation doesn't just appear out of thin air. It comes from people, real people who deserve real credit. To proper recognition, Dan said, and we clinked our glasses together. As the late afternoon sun poured in through my office windows, I found myself reflecting on the journey it had taken to get here. At 54, I had finally achieved what had always seemed just out of reach. Not just success, but visibility. My name was now permanently tied to the algorithm that changed the game, right where it belonged.